Welcome to Monday's show. First up, we'll see satellite imagery here for get my monitors on. Okay, there we go. And we've got moisture flowing northward here from the North Pacific up the west coast. Still got some blowing snow going on up around Kotzebue today, lower visibilities, but we got mixed precipitation also from the Cape Lisburne area. They're reporting rain this afternoon, strong gusty south winds all the way down to mostly rain by the time you get down to the Kuskokwim Delta coast. Temperatures rising into the lower 40s, near 40 into the lower 40s, some locations here over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, and in across actually south central Alaska as well today, especially the higher elevation seeing the warmer temperatures than the lower elevation areas are, and that due to the warm air aloft of the upper level ridge that's right up through here, and of course got south to north flow here to the west over the eastern Bering Sea, low pressure south of the Aleutians there, and then northerly flow here to the east, and we've got cold upper level low up here over the Mackenzie Bay area. It's going to be dropping southward tonight, actually is, and will be cutting across the southern panhandle tomorrow, so it'll keep the cold northerly flow going over the eastern interior here along the border and down into the panhandle. Otherwise, you can see sunshine over Kodiak Island, up into much of south central Alaska, even along the Aleutian Range here in northeast Bristol Bay. Seeing pretty nice conditions today. And rolling this through again, you can see the pattern really not shifting much. Clouds mostly going to the north, dissipating as they try to push into the interior here as that high pressure area aloft holds in place. On the chart here, next system coming up across the eastern Aleutians, that bringing an increase in the wind and rain today to the Alaska Peninsula with less wind but wet conditions into the Pribilof Islands, a band of light snow there from St. Matthew Island up across St. Lawrence Island into areas of the Seward Peninsula, heaviest on the south side of the Seward Peninsula than on the north side, but temperatures rising up above freezing Buckland, and areas of mixed precipitation along the northwest coast there on up to the western Arctic coast. Really not much at all on the Arctic coast or the North Slope, and then dry with areas of sunshine over the interior all the way down into the Gulf of Alaska, and especially over the southeast coast today. For tonight, look for a few flurries to develop over toward the eastern border from roughly about Eagle down to the northern slopes of the eastern Alaska Range, maybe Tok Northway area, possibly Nabesna, and then should stay north of White Pass there. So it'll just probably see an increase in the clouds. There's some variable clouds over the southeast coast tonight with other areas staying clear. And rain will push into Bristol Bay, and an area of light snow and snow showers will continue here from St. Lawrence Island right on up to the northwest coast, Noatak Valley area. Much the same pattern. This system out here pretty much stuck in place for the last couple of days. And the trough extending down will keep some snow showers or rain and snow showers going from Unimak Island westward. In the colder air here, it'll definitely be snow down to sea level for Adak and Atka, then a break, and then a very weak system trying to push in towards Shemya. And we'll see for tomorrow that really breaks up and dissipates here. Weak trough pushing off to the northeast. Another one behind it, so really not much weather at all with these two features. Not much weather with this trough at all. In fact, pretty light winds across the Aleutians and the Bering Sea. As you can see, very few isobars, so not much of gradient at all as far as winds go, and areas of light snow, weak low set up right over St. Lawrence Island, so light variable winds there into the Bering Strait. And this low will keep light snow going at times for the northwest Arctic, or the northwest part of the state. Western Brooks Range, Noatak Valley there, northwest coast, western Arctic coastal areas, and then just some scattered scattered showers along the trough here, remnants of that trough down into the southwest interior, all the way to the Alaska Peninsula, and really no change. Variable clouds, dry conditions, light winds over the central and eastern interior down to the North Gulf Coast. Another sunny day tomorrow for southern Alaska here. Maybe a few clouds into the Copper River Basin. And flurries staying north and east of the Panhandle there. Otherwise, another mostly sunny day there. This low staying to the south. This low really doesn't have much weather with it in the Gulf of Alaska. And we'll see on the day Wednesday, virtually that low is gone now, so not much change again. A very weak system here along the lower Yukon River Valley areas. May kick off a few scattered, isolated rain and snow showers over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. Maybe some snow showers there with that trough extending up across the eastern Seward Peninsula area. Nome, White Mountain, up to Kotzebue, maybe Selawik could see some light snow possibly. Otherwise, pretty good out to the west there. Look for some sunshine with light winds for St. Lawrence Island. And then this trough skirting the Arctic coast with some few skiffs of light snow, flurries, and fog. Some of that getting down to the North Slope, but barely getting into the Brooks Range at all. Sunny, mostly sunny skies over interior Alaska once again into the Panhandle. Maybe a little bit more of a breeze with this Arctic high pushing down, but gusty northeast winds, and that's about it. Dry conditions, and temperatures stay on the chilly side there. And a weak warm front may spread some light rain up into the eastern Aleutians, maybe the western Alaska Peninsula, or it may not. Depends how strong this is when it gets there. But the way it looks now, it's not very strong at all. But look for a chance of rain for those locations. High pressure, light winds out over the Bering Sea, and all of the Aleutians. For lows tonight, down into the lower to mid-teens for many areas of the Panhandle tonight, lower 20s out along the coast, near zero in the Copper River Basin, and 10 to 20 south central Alaska tonight, and 5 to 20 for the Kuskokwim Valley, mid to upper 20s Bristol Bay, right around freezing for Kodiak. Highs tomorrow, 30s to lower 40s, some higher elevations reaching the mid 40s again, maybe even upper 40s, and lower 40s for Kodiak, upper 30s near 40 in Bristol Bay, and in the 30s for the Kuskokwim Valley. Otherwise, the Panhandle in the 20s to lower 30s. Lows down to 5 to 15 here over the northern Panhandle, otherwise 15 to 20 elsewhere. Low below zero in the Copper River Basin, and 15 to 25 for the low south central Alaska, the Kuskokwim Valley, upper 20s for Bristol Bay, and then the highs in the 20s to mid 30s, some areas pushing 40 again over southern Alaska, and in the 20s to mid 30s for the southeast coast. Up to the north, lows 5 to 15 over the interior, a little below zero here, Fort Yukon up to the eastern Arctic coast. Highs tomorrow in the 20s, central interior to the Brooks Range, actually 20s, lower 30s all the way up to the Arctic coast, mid 30s for Nome, and followed by lows a little below zero in the extreme east and quite a bit above zero. In fact, actually 15 to 25 here in the west, colder out toward the Bering Strait, and then highs Wednesday afternoon, not too bad, 20s to lower 30s, and then lows tonight in the upper 20s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Persistent band of IFR out here over the eastern Bering Sea northward across the western Seward Peninsula, just grazing the southwest coast. This is for tomorrow morning. And then back along and off the western central Arctic coast, really not making any eastward progress at all, with high pressure holding over the interior. A little bit of IFR here with a big upper level low dropping down into the southern Panhandle. Could kick off some, will kick off some lower conditions over toward the eastern border, but southern Alaska, Panhandle staying really good. VFR, marginal VFR for the Aleutians, southern Bering Sea, and Alaska Peninsula. Marginal VFR may show up right along the central coast, otherwise staying VFR. And then for the afternoon, that area of marginal VFR is gone, and just solid VFR for the southeast coast, Gulf of Alaska, southern Alaska here, Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, Fognak Island, all the way north to the eastern Arctic coast. Marginal VFR up across Kodiak Island, though, Bristol Bay, the Aleutians, southern Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula, and still some IFR here, kind of edging in over the Yukon Delta and half of Norton Sound, most of the Seward Peninsula, and continuing northward there. but starting to dissipate and become less extensive, especially over the eastern Bering Sea, just marginal VFR now. And then for the morning hours, it looks like some of this pushes into Bristol Bay and eastward to the Kuskokwim Valley there. Marginal VFR up to the western Alaska Range, but east and south of the mountain stays VFR. Panhandle VFR. In fact, most of the eastern half of the state stays in the VFR zone. IFR, again, coming inland a little bit here into the western interior up to the southern slopes of the western Brooks Range. And then for the afternoon, some IFR slips in toward the Koyukuk Valley, back down in toward the northern Kuskokwim Valley there, but generally marginal VFR up to the western Alaska Range. VFR holds Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, some marginal VFR here, Kodiak Island, right on up into Prince William Sound now on the North Gulf Coast. Otherwise, the VFR continues to the southeast coast, Copper River Basin, and eastern interior becoming VFR here for the northern Bering Sea, Seward Peninsula, Yukon Delta, western Arctic coast. Pretty marginal, though, for the Pribilofs and the Aleutians. And for passes, another VFR day coming up. For tomorrow, for Adigan and Anaktuvik, better VFR day, I would say, for both those passes. And then for Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR for sure for windy, rainy VFR in either approach. And Isabel, VFR. Mintesta, VFR once again, and Tanita as well, looking good, VFR flying there. Definitely VFR for Portage. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR for another couple of days. And for the freezing levels, south flow here over the Bering Sea, pulling warm air north and then settling in along the upper level ridge axis here. 8,000 feet right up into the southwest interior, the lower Yukon River Valley, 6,000 feet up to the Brooks Range, and 2,000 feet north of the Arctic coast. And then with cold air dropping southward here, you can see the surface south of the Queen Charlottes. And for icing, really running out of moisture here. Still some leftover moisture streaming northward. Could bring some isolated moderate rime icing, St. Lawrence Island, western Seward Peninsula, and into the western Brooks Range area, Noatak Valley, maybe the western Arctic coast. Still a threat down here, just elevated possibilities of some possible light icing for the Alaska Peninsula. It doesn't look like anything too serious if it happens at all. Otherwise, icing free for the remainder of the state, Gulf of Alaska Panhandle, even out to the west. And for the jet stream, here's that sharp upper level ridge here right up into the interior and actually all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast. South to north flow here along the west coast up to 125 knots, about 105 knots over the Yukon Delta northward there to the western Arctic coast. East side of the ridge, strong northerly flow. This cold upper low at this elevation dropping into British Columbia, 115 to 120 knot northerlies here coming right across Yakutat and just off the Panhandle. 65 knot northerlies here at 9,000 feet, 50 to 70 knot south-southwesterlies right over the Seward Peninsula, 3,000 feet southwest 45 knots into the Yukon Delta and the western Brooks Range North Slope, northeasterlies of 40 knots over the northern southeast coast, lighter winds under the main low center down over the southern Panhandle. Turbulence-wise, moderate chop or moderate turbulence here, mechanical for the northern Panhandle and also for the Brooks Range on down into the Yukon Delta.
It can be many miles long, from 1 to 100 feet high, traveling at 400 miles per hour. This ocean monster is known as a tsunami, and it can wreak havoc on coastal populations and landscapes. A tsunami is a series of ocean waves caused by any large and sudden disturbance of the sea surface. Tsunamis can be generated by landslides, volcanic eruptions, or even meteorite impacts in the ocean, but they are most often caused by an earthquake where there's a sudden displacement of the ocean floor. When that happens, there's a transfer of energy from the sea floor to the ocean, causing waves on the surface to radiate outward in all directions. In deep waters, these waves may not even be detectable. But when the tsunami enters shallower waters, the wave speed slows and its height increases. The water along the coast may recede noticeably. A large wall of turbulent water, called a bore, may also form. When the tsunami hits, it may come ashore like a fast-rising flood and strike with devastating force. The series of waves may continue for hours. The first one may not be the last or the largest. For your safety, know the potential warning signs of an incoming tsunami. A strong earthquake that causes difficulty standing. A rapid rise or fall of the water along the coast. A loud ocean roar. When you're in a coastal area, it's important to keep alert for messages from local officials, such as lifeguards, police, the U.S. Tsunami Warning Centers, and NOAA All Hazards Radio. If you find yourself in a location of a tsunami strike, here's what you need to do to stay safe. Keep calm. Walk or run to higher ground, 100 feet above sea level or 1 mile inland. Do not drive. Keep roads open for emergency vehicles. If you cannot move to higher ground, use the stairs to get to the 3rd floor or higher in a sturdy building. Follow all instructions from local officials and stay out of coastal areas until authorities issue an all clear. Tsunamis can strike any coastline in the world and can affect locations thousands of miles away from where they formed. They may be uncommon, but the devastation they cause makes them a deadly force in nature. For more information on tsunamis, go to the following sites.
Tsunami, a killer wave, speeding across the ocean at 400 miles an hour. It smashes into land, destroying everything in its path. Tsunamis do not have a season, but they can strike any coast at any time. If one forms close to the shore, the shaking of the earth and a loud roar may warn of its approach. But when a tsunami forms across the ocean, it can take hours to reach the shore, enough time to warn people to move to higher land. Over the past 20 years, NOAA has developed DART, a real-time monitoring system that provides data for forecasting tsunamis. The DART systems have been deployed in earthquake-prone areas throughout the ocean, including the Pacific and Indian basins. A DART system combines a surface buoy and a sensor on the ocean floor. This sensor detects changes in water pressure and seismic activity and transmits the data back to the surface. If these changes indicate a tsunami may form, the buoy signals an alert via satellite to the tsunami warning centers in Alaska and Hawaii. Back at the centers, scientists plug the data into pre-existing models. These models predict the height, the arrival time, and the coastal locations that the tsunami will hit. Watches and warnings are issued to the affected communities so preparations can begin. Today, 47 DART stations are positioned all around the world, ready to detect and warn coastal communities about the next potential tsunami. With the DART system and tsunami warning centers in place, we are now better prepared to predict a killer wave before it strikes.
December 26, 2004. What began as an undersea earthquake in the Indian Ocean ended as the most deadly tsunami in recorded history, with nearly 240,000 lives lost. This was a devastating wake-up call to coastal communities and tsunami research. Prior to this event, only 6 of NOAA's Deep Ocean Assessment and Reporting of Tsunami, or DART, buoys were in place. Scientists could only predict tsunami arrival times, not flood potential. And there was not a global tsunami warning system. Today, 10 years later, we can tell a different story. U.S. and international coastlines are far better prepared for such a catastrophe, thanks in large part to research and technology developed at the NOAA Center for Tsunami Research at Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory. NOAA's DART array is now complete, with 39 buoys operated by the National Weather Service's National Data Buoy Center. Along with 21 international buoys, this array can measure a tsunami wave as small as 1 centimeter in the open ocean and provide these data in real time to forecast when a tsunami may hit the coast and how much flooding there will be. NOAA scientists and engineers are currently testing the 4th-generation DART buoy that will be able to measure local tsunamis as well as distant ones. Flooding forecast models incorporate local topography and historical tsunami data in order to more accurately predict exactly how a tsunami might behave when it reaches shore. NOAA has 75 site-specific models that can provide high-resolution flooding forecasts for effective response and mitigation during a tsunami event. NOAA has gathered data from every tsunami since 2004 to improve its forecast models. Today, it operates the world's only real-time tsunami flooding forecast system using DART data to accurately compute flooding forecasts. The NOAA Tsunami Warning Centers make tsunami data available on the internet and issue advisories, watches, and warnings through the Emergency Alert System and via NOAA weather radios. While it is impossible to prevent a tsunami, we are now much better prepared to detect them and predict their paths and impacts, so those in coastal communities can take the steps necessary to safely protect themselves.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Moving into the marine forecast here for Clarence Strait tomorrow. North winds add 15 knots, seas at about 3 feet. Passage Canal, add 5 knots to that, north at 20, seas 4 feet. And small craft advisories for Lynn Canal, north winds 25 knots with 5-foot seas. And for the day Wednesday, north winds 30 knots now for the northern inside waters, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay area. And Stevens Passage, small craft advisories for north winds up to 25 knots. And north winds at about 20 knots with 4-foot seas for Clarence Strait. And moving over to Prince William Sound tomorrow, pretty light winds, variable to east at 10 knots. Eastern North Gulf Coast, light northwest winds at 15 knots, and westerlies at 20 knots for the western North Gulf Coast. Barren Island, small craft advisories, west winds at 25 knots, northwest at 15 for Kamishak Bay, and Cook Inlet, north to northeasterlies 10 to 15 knots. For Wednesday, Cook Inlet, light winds out of the north to northwest at about 10 knots with seas 2 to 3 feet. West winds at 15 there for Kamishak Bay. For the Barren Islands, western North Gulf Coast, light variable winds at about 10 knots. Southwest at 15 for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound, northeast winds at about 10. And for Kodiak Island, Tuesday, southwest winds 15 to 20 knots. And for Bristol Bay, looking at an east wind at 20 knots for the day Tuesday. Variable winds at 20 knots here for the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula and Pacific side, south at 20 with seas up to 15 feet. Then for the day Wednesday, Alaska Peninsula, northeast winds 20 to 25 knots. Seas running 4 feet on the Bering Sea side to 11 feet in the Pacific side. Bristol Bay, north winds at 20 knots, seas 2 feet. Kodiak Island, north to northwest breezes at about 15 knots with 3 to 8 foot seas. And for the eastern Aleutians, west to southwest winds at 15 knots, seas 8 to 13 feet. Adak and Atka, small craft advisories, not too bad though, northwest at 20 25. And then southwest to northwest winds for the western Aleutians at only 15 to 20 knots. And then for Wednesday, western Aleutians, Kiska to Shemya, southwest at 15, and from Amchitka Island, northwest at 28, Akanatka, back into small craft advisories, but winds north to northeast at 25 knots. And for the Fox Islands, north to northeast winds 25 to 30 knots. Southwest coast tomorrow, southeast winds 25 knots. Norton Sound, southeast winds 25 knots. And St. Lawrence Island, southeast winds 25 knots. St. Matthew Island, northwest winds at 25 knots, and the Pribilofs winds will be southwest at 25. And for the day Wednesday, for St. Paul and St. George, northeast at 20, and north to northeast 15 knots, laying down for the southwest coast. St. Lawrence Island, southwest winds at 20, southwest 15 for Norton Sound, east winds 20 knots there for St. Matthew Island, with seas running 5 to 6 feet out here over the Bering Sea. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, gale warnings here for the east side for southeast winds at 30 knots, and those diminish down to 20 knots in the southeast on the central coast. Western Arctic coast, south winds at 15 knots, and then southeast winds 25 knots there for the Chukchi Sea. For Wednesdays here from for the Chukchi Sea, southwest winds 20 knots, and then brisk wind advisories here from Cape Thompson up the west side of the Arctic coast there to about Point Ley for 25-knot winds there. But the central coast, south at 15, and then brisk wind advisories for the eastern coastline for east to southeast direction winds at 25 to 30 knots. And for tonight, still some areas of snow and winds coming down, though, for the area of St. Lawrence Island up here to the northwest coast, and more rain pushing into the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay area, some light precipitation trying to get into the southwest coast, but the system not all that strong, stays variably cloudy over the interior with light winds, maybe some flurries over toward the eastern border south of Eagle. And then for tomorrow, remnants of that front may kick off some light shower activity here from the Alaska Peninsula all the way up to Kotzebue Sound. Maybe some light snow showers with this over the Pribilof Islands. Otherwise, not much out there as far as storminess over the Bering Sea. Interior, no change. Variably cloudy, mostly sunny. And that includes the southeast coast. And same thing for Wednesday. Maybe a little breezy here over the Panhandle, especially the northern areas, Lynn Canal up to Skagway. Fair over the interior with some light snow possible on the Arctic coast. Thank you for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.